First of all, my name is John Laredo, former Democratic leader here in the House, and I am working with a coalition of organizations, People for the American Way, National Common Cause, and a variety of other organizations that are interested in exposing the corporate influence that ALEC and its members have on the Arizona State Legislature. We are here to release the findings of a report that you all have that details a side-by-side comparison of ALEC model legislation and bills that have been presented and pushed here at the Arizona State Legislature. ALEC is the mechanism that corporations use to control public policy, not only here in the state of Arizona, but around the country. It is policy that is designed to enrich the richest corporations in the country at the expense of the middle class and at the expense of voters all over the country and the state of Arizona. Now here, this week, the ALEC conference is taking place in Scottsdale. We have legislators right here from the Arizona State Capitol who will be participating, who will be taking full advantage of all of the free meals, full advantage of the free rooms. They will be playing golf. They will be taking advantage of all the perks that every lobbyist can throw at them. Apparently, they haven't learned a whole lot from the Fiestable scandal. They still think that they can get away with this type of behavior, and we're here to tell them that they can't. They will be exposed, and they will be held accountable to the voters of Arizona. So they participate in this ALEC event at their own expense. Now, we have a variety of speakers here today that would like to give their own personal views and experiences and explain how ALEC legislation affects Arizona citizens. The first person I'd like to call to the microphone is Erica Andiola, and she is with the Arizona Dream Act Coalition.
All right, well, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying this beautiful day in Arizona. And my name is Erica Andiola. I am a co-founder of the Arizona Dream Act Coalition, which is also part of a national organization called United We Dream. The work that we mainly do is we're actually an undocumented student-led organization that works to really empower our own communities to really come out of the shadows, really, stop fearing what is going on in different states such as Arizona. And one of the biggest things that we have done this year is really work to stop deportations of undocumented students and their families that really have not done anything wrong. Most of them have no criminal records. Most of them are just basically either driving or doing anything that you and I would do in a basic, in any day, and they get stopped for no reason. And we have about, a couple of reasons why this is happening, and we have noticed that, of course, one of them is the fact that the administration is looking to deport about 400,000 undocumented immigrants this year alone, and so that's a huge cause for this to happen. But another huge cause that has been really making our job even harder to stop these deportations is that we have laws such as SB 1070 that have been passed in states like Arizona and now are spreading to other states such as Florida, such as Alabama, Georgia, and you name it. And so for me, I know that this is something that ALEC has been behind, and I know that in order for them to really get some of their members to be, more profitable, they have been using our communities, they have been using a lot of our students that really have not done much to be incarcerated in private prisons. And these private prisons are actually funded, or not funded, but they're actually getting profits to corporations such as Corrections Corporation of America that is looking to really expand even more. And the most scary thing to me is our own legislators, such as our former senator, the president of the Senate, Russell Pierce, have been very, very involved in these types of organizations that have really not only affected Arizona, but that also have other members in other states that come together to talk about these types of laws and how they can actually push them in the Senate and the House and eventually have them passed. To me, this is a very personal issue because I am also undocumented. I have really grown up in this country since I was 11 years old, and I have seek to be here, just seeking the American dream and really just going to college and doing everything that we all look to do. And it is very unfortunate that these individuals are trying to really incarcerate my family, really incarcerate my friends and myself, just to really get profit out of it. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here with all these amazing activists that have different issues that they're also being affected by ALEC. And so I want to thank you for being here, and we have to really spread this and make sure that ALEC is really exposed as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, do you have? Okay, next up, from the American Friends Service Committee, we have Caroline Isaacs.
Good morning. My name is Caroline Isaacs. I'm the program director for the Arizona office of the American Friends Service Committee. It's an international social justice organization grounded in the Quaker faith. Here in Arizona, our office has been focused on criminal justice reform, and in that capacity, we've been following the rise of privatization of prisons over the last 15 years in Arizona. And I'm here to tell you that ALEC is not new to the business of writing laws to put more people in prison. The so-called tough-on-crime legislation of the 1990s was almost all due to ALEC model legislation, things like 3 strikes and you're out, truth in sentencing, mandatory sentencing laws. So immigrant detention is simply the new growth industry for the prison industrial complex, and these corporations, through ALEC, are now writing bills to get tough on immigrants. Long ago, ALEC figured out that its corporate members can make big bucks by locking people up. For-profit prison corporations have long been involved in ALEC. CCA, the Corrections Corporation of America that was mentioned, was the chair of the Public Safety Committee for about 10 years. The current roster includes CCA, the nation's largest private jailer, GEO Group, the second largest, Sodexo Marriott, which is the nation's leading food service provider to prisons, and Taser International, just to name a few. Back in 1998, ALEC gave its Outstanding Legislator of the Year award to John Cates. Mr. Cates now owns the consulting firm Public Policy Partners. And while PPP has more than 30 Arizona clients, it has only 2 on the national level, GEO Group and Ron Sachs Communications, a Florida-based public relations firm that promotes prison privatization. PPP as a firm also appears to be an advocate for expanded use of private prisons. Federal lobbying reports show PPP owner John Cates lobbying on behalf of the firm on issues of private correctional detention management. And certainly PPP lobbies very hard here in Arizona for those same issues. By now we've all heard that CCA lobbyists are or were advising the governor on policy. Brewer also named former CCA lobbyist to be the chair of her Commission on Privatization and Efficiency, which has unsurprisingly recommended increased privatization in Arizona. It's only when we understand the depth of the influence of this industry in Arizona that we can make sense of the actions of our legislators and governor. Otherwise, their single-minded devotion to the failed experiment of prison privatization would seem utterly insane. Decades of evidence overwhelmingly shows that for-profit prisons are more expensive, less safe, and are not accountable to the taxpayers of Arizona. The Department of Corrections has shown for the last 6 years that the state is losing money on this experiment, yet the legislators' response is, don't bother me with the facts. And consider that Management and Training Corporation, the company responsible for the escapes from the Kingman prison of 3 prisoners last summer that resulted in the murder of 2 people, this company is currently a finalist for a contract for over $500 million in Arizona to build and operate 5,000 more prison beds in Arizona. If the government and the legislature cannot prove using independent, objective data that their claims of cost savings and public safety are real, then we are left with 2 possible conclusions. that our state leaders are so ideologically wedded to the idea of privatization that they are unable or unwilling to face reality, or that they are beholden to the for-profit prison industry and that this industry has such unmitigated power in Arizona that it has simply hijacked the democratic process. There's a fundamental ethical problem when we give up control of our prisons to for-profit corporations, granting them literal life and death power over people who are completely disenfranchised. Private prison companies are dependent on an ever-increasing supply of inmates in order to stay solvent. When human beings become the raw material in a business, there is an inherent pressure on the company to increase the input of people into its system, and a disincentive for the companies to accomplish what we all think of as the primary mission of a correctional institution, to reform and rehabilitate prisoners. It also creates an incentive to tinker with the laws that criminalize more behaviors and types of people in order to keep those prison beds full. This process has nothing to do with protecting the public or reducing crime. Arizona's recidivism rate is around 50%, and the private corporations don't even bother to measure theirs. It has to do with making money, and that's ALEC's specialty. Thank you very much.
You know, one of ALEC's primary goals as well is to privatize the public education system in this country. We have seen a number of bills that have been pushed here in Arizona to do specifically that. The next speaker is Erin Kirchhoff, and she is with the Chacon School District and with the Arizona Education Association.
Kirchhoff, Kirchhoff, like Frank. Thank you. Good morning. Like John said, my name is Erin Kirchhoff, and I'm a middle school teacher in the Chacon School District located in the East Valley. I'm here today to share my story with taxpayers in public school neighborhoods across the state about how legislators who meet here at the Capitol make laws that impact our students. I'd like to tell you about a colleague of mine, Reuben Johnson. Reuben is one of the most outstanding music teachers I have ever met. He has this amazing ability to get 30 kindergartners to listen to him and yet have 8th graders call him cool, which is a pretty impressive feat. Yet, despite Reuben's awesome teaching ability and passion for his subject, he was riffed or laid off last year. Reuben lost his job because of bad legislation passed here in these buildings. And the students at Reuben's school are paying the price. Teachers in my district, parents across the state, and community members like yourselves have been operating under a misperception. It's a misperception that many Arizonans share. We believe that legislators we elect represent us above all else when they are making decisions that impact the quality of our neighborhood schools. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily true. Instead, a majority of the legislators here at the Capitol are supporting ideas generated by corporate lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and all across the country. Through ALEC, legislators are sitting side by side with lobbyists and groups to draft education legislation that serves the interests of those who want to privatize our education system. No teacher input, no student input, corporate input. Drafting education policies that turn our public schools into a profit-making endeavor. While ALEC has been around for decades, we didn't know until recently how it operates, and because of its secret backdoor history, it's difficult to measure the impact ALEC has had on legislators who over a decade ago passed Arizona's tuition tax credit and charter school laws. These same laws resulted in profitable business ventures for these several legislators. Thanks to the work of the People for the American Way and the Common Cause and a side-by-side report they created, I can now educate parents and teachers in my neighborhood about how our legislators write education laws that directly impact my students, our students, such as legislation that can be directly linked to ALEC model language for virtual schools, where students need not be physically present during instruction, eliminating teachers and the connection they build with students. I have a lot of those students who need those connections. I have a 7th grade boy named Rudy. Rudy's having a really hard time right now. He's living with his aunt and his uncle. He just lost his mother. And he's also going through typical 7th grade struggles. We all remember those: bullying, first loves, academic struggles. Rudy comes to see me every single morning to talk about these issues. and we work through them, and sometimes he cries, and sometimes he vents, and sometimes he just needs to sit. In a virtual classroom like ALEC supports, where would Rudy go? I don't know where all of our Rudys would go. Another side-by-side comparison shows how ALEC was able to get legislation introduced that funnels our public tax dollars to private schools through scholarships, or the parental grants that would pay parents our tax dollars for sending their students to private school. The parents and the taxpayers in my neighborhood have not been clamoring for these changes. Instead, they have been asking for adequately funded neighborhood schools that provide full-day kindergarten, smaller class sizes, and training that support teachers. In fact, a report released just this morning from the Morrison Institute stated that 91% of Arizonans say that K-12 education is their most important priority. In 2009 and 2010, Arizona legislators cut or withheld over $500 million from Arizona's already underfunded school system. Full-day kindergarten eliminated. Teachers and staff were reduced as class sizes rose. And yet at the same time, legislators introduced legislation to expand tuition tax credits and pass voucher bills. Even after voters taxed themselves in 2010, passing Proposition 100, legislators made hundreds of millions of dollars in school cuts. We all know why that our legislator seems to be out of touch with voters, and now we can begin to see why. There could be light at the end of the tunnel, however. Elections can still belong to Arizona voters if we are willing to hold our legislators accountable to our priorities and expose legislators who are representing the narrow interests of corporations through ALEC. And in fact, we already have begun. The Senate president has been recalled. Former Senator Russell Pierce, exposing his connections to national agendas, defended his position on education by sending out a series of flyers promoting his voting record on education that privatized education. This fall, instead, voters chose to elect his challenger, who pledged to work more closely with the local school board and community leaders on education issues. I am hopeful that we can return our legislators' allegiance to the Arizona voters through broad coalitions like the one here today. I am confident that once educated, our voters will be able to choose legislators who represent their neighborhood interests over ALEC's corporate lobbyist interests. And we need to make sure that they do, for Rudy, for my students, and for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Now we have Lilia Alvarez, who is the co-founder of Citizens for a Better Arizona.
Good morning. My name is Lilia Alvarez, and that's Lilia. Alvarez, A-L-V as in Victor, A-R-E-Z. The American Legislative Exchange Council does what its name says. It exchanges legislation. ALEC's Voter ID Act came to Arizona as Proposition 200. Proposition 200 was placed on the ballot in 2004. This act was passed with 56% of the vote and requires now that citizens present a photo ID or two approved written forms of identification in order to register to vote. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called voter suppression. Interestingly, there was a bipartisan opposition to Proposition 200. For example, Republican U.S. Senator John McCain was against it. Not only does Proposition 200 now require voters to show up at their polls with an identification, but also it requires that we upkeep a large database. And according to the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, as of 2008, Proposition 200 barred over 30,000 citizens from registering. This is fraudulent. It is our right as citizens to vote and to not be suppressed when trying to register to do that. This type of extreme legislation did not happen by coincidence. As Citizens for a Better Arizona, we were able to organize, mobilize, and create power. Now, as a citizen, I was able to watch other citizens. Together, we become a force to be reckoned with. We were able to effectively recall a sitting state Senate president. This was the first time in the history of the United States, and that includes Arizona, to recall a sitting state Senate president. This was not just any state Senate president. His name was Russell Pierce. He was the author of SB 1070 and also Proposition 200, which I was just speaking to you about. The message is clear. We as citizens are the conscience of our legislative process. We are now informed citizenry, and we will not deter from being that conscience. We will not step down from our essential role in our democratic process in Arizona. We will no longer tolerate Pierce-like extreme legislation or political rhetoric. Together, as citizens, we can ensure that this message continues forward strongly and boldly, that we as citizens deserve a better Arizona. Thank you.
Next up, we have Rebecca Friend, the Executive Director and Secretary Treasurer of Arizona Afl-Cio.
Thank you. Good morning. Everybody awake? Good morning. Nice weather out here, yes? That's why we love Arizona. Good morning. I'm Rebecca Friend, Executive Director and Secretary Treasurer of the Arizona Afl-Cio, representing 180,000 working women and men in the state and 200 unions. I'm here to introduce two people to you to speak about the direct effect that ALEC bills have had on their lives. And make no mistake, ALEC is after unions. We saw the most anti-union bills we've ever seen this last session, 20 of them, and we're involved in 2 lawsuits as well as the National Labor Relations Board over another initiative that was passed, Save Our Secret Ballot. So it's my pleasure to introduce Cindy Chacon. She's a rank and file union member of the Office and Professional Employees International Union Local 30, and she's going to speak about ALEC-sponsored legislation which attacks the rights of workers in our state. Please welcome Cindy.
Thank you. Good morning. As Rebecca said, my name is Cindy Chacon. I am a single mother, a bookkeeper, and a proud union member. As a worker and a voter in Arizona, I am deeply concerned when ALEC, its corporate members, and the politicians who do their bidding promote legislation that undermines the workers' rights and weakens unions. Laws have been passed that restrict workers' rights to freely assemble and protest peacefully. Paycheck deception laws have been passed that prohibit the deduction of voluntary contributions to political committees from union workers' paychecks. Propositions have been placed on the ballot that illegally diminish all workers the freedom to form and join a union. Laws prohibiting the state from accepting federal funds for public construction projects should a project labor agreement be required, even though these types of agreements provide benefits to both union members and non-union workers alike. These are but a few examples of the numerous ALEC-sponsored inspired legislation attacking the rights of working families in Arizona. Through shadowy organizations like the American Legislative Exchange Council, large corporations are using their vast financial resources and power to take political control of our democracy. Should they succeed in eliminating unions and destroying many of the workers' rights, all middle class Arizonans will suffer. Thank you.
Cindy's first ever press conference, so I think she did well. Thank you, Cindy. I'd like now to introduce Frank Patchouli, the president of Afl-Cio Local 2960. Frank represents over 2,500 City of Phoenix workers in job classifications ranging from 911 dispatchers to inspectors, secretaries to security. Frank has been involved in union activity his entire life and comes from a long line of proud union family members. Frank will describe the current wave of privatizing city services by ALEC-sponsored legislation, which is harmful not only to public employees, but to the citizens and the community they serve. Please welcome Frank.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. That's Patchouli, common spelling. As Rebecca stated, my name is Frank Patchouli. I'm proud to represent the City of Phoenix Labor Union Local 2960. The other night, after enjoying a very large Italian Thanksgiving meal, I started to flip through the channels of my television and came across a news show. Now, I should have been a little suspicious right away, as that channel on my cable box tends to kind of bypass that one station. But a news organization that advertises itself as fair and balanced, I figured I wanted to watch. It said unions in the public sector. It had to be a well-researched news story that would only show the truth. I know, I'm shocked as you are, but it didn't show a well-balanced story about privatization. The story had one consistent theme throughout, and that is that the private sector, with non-union employees at the helm, could do a better job than public sector employees. Better and cheaper. Truly, at the end of the story, I expected to see this message brought to you by the people of ALEC. The myths in this type of propaganda must be confronted with facts and shown to be false. Two stood out in my mind while I was digesting my meal. Well, about 15, but I have about 2 minutes, so 2 myths. Myth number 1, that privatization saves money. Somehow, if John's sanitation department took over, we'd all have less taxes and better service. No, in fact, time and time again, it's the exact opposite. The Government Finance Officers Association estimates hidden and direct costs at up to 25% of the contract price. In 2007, half the government agencies that brought back in-house services reported the primary reason was cost savings. In Wisconsin, the Department of Transportation wasted $1 million outsourcing its engineering work to private non-union contractors. It could have been done better and cheaper by in-house union city employees. I guess Fox News didn't see that little bit of information that's called, what's the word? Oh, that's right, facts. Myth number 2, private non-union companies do a better job. Of course, the myth of the lazy city union worker. The problem is, that isn't true. There are multiple examples, in fact, that there are huge declines in service quality under private, non-union contractors. The far right, for some reason, wants to ingrain in our heads that a private company can do a better job than the public worker who bleeds, sweats, and toils for the citizens of this country. The facts show public sector unions are more educated and dedicated time and time again. In 2010 in Gary, Indiana, the city canceled its 10-year contract with United Water. Why? Because a state inspection found United Water violated discharge limits 84 times, had 25 pieces of broken equipment, filed inadequate monitoring reports, and failed to meet mandated deadlines. When the city took back the service in-house, they ended up saving $8 million of taxpayer money. But I hear Bill O'Reilly drinks bottled water, so what the hey? When it comes down to it, right-wing politicians and organizations like ALEC want the rich to get richer, the poor to get poorer, and to destroy the middle class. It's as clear now as it was 100 years ago in the struggle for a fair wage, for a fair day's pay. We need to educate ourselves, take action, and become united in our resolve to oppose such anti-worker, anti-American, and anti-middle-class legislation. The bottom line is this. These people, we make America strong, not them. We make this country run, not them. And we represent American values, not them. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Next up, we have Todd Lanfried. He is with the Arizona Employers for Immigration Reform.
I want to thank the organizers for putting the business guy after the union guy. There's just a couple of points I want to make this morning, but my main point is going to be that not everything that comes out of ALEC is good legislation, and it doesn't always have the support or interests of all of corporate America. As my organization, Arizona Employers for Immigration Reform, main interest is in immigration, I'm going to give you, basically use SB 1070 as an example of ALEC legislation gone wrong. I'll preface this by saying that we know there's an immigration problem. I don't think anybody needs to debate that. We know that the Congress hasn't been doing their job. We know that there are people who shouldn't be here. We're not opposed to that. But ALEC-styled SB 1070 legislation isn't the best way to solve the problem. And quite frankly, when you look at the organizations that have participated in ALEC in the drafting of these types of laws, it's pretty obvious why we have an enforcement-only approach and not a more comprehensive one. So where has this gotten us? Over the past year, several studies have been released that look at the impacts these laws have had on Arizona and on every other jurisdiction in the country where these laws have been introduced and passed. Well, here's the news story. They don't work. They don't work anywhere, not even close. There is no study from any source that shows that these laws are good for business, jobs, tax revenues, reduced spending, nothing. And I'll give you a few examples. Prince William County, Virginia, $14.9 million to train their law enforcement. Steep slide in tax revenues, significant increase in business closures, and home foreclosure rates that rose to 3 times the regional rate. In Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Bankers Association conducted a study that found that the loss of 90,000 undocumented immigrants and their families meant a $1.9 billion with a B, gross state product loss to the state's economy. And an Urban League study found that there was no meaningful savings to state programs as a result of their departure. In Farmers Branch, Texas, $5 million in lawsuit fees and loss of business reputation, closes of businesses, loss of tax revenues. Hazleton, Pennsylvania, another $5 million in lawsuit costs. Same thing, increased business and vacancy rates, lower property values, and businesses have closed. In Arizona, we saw it cost $5 million to train law enforcement. We had $186 million in immediate convention and travel tourism losses. $14.4 billion with a B in lost gross state product, 172,000 related job losses, $40.7 million in lost state revenues. Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, all states that have passed these bills this year are seeing the exact same problems. Georgia farmers lost a reported $330 million in crops because they couldn't get the labor to bring them in. Alabama farmers and their construction industry are also suffering. There's even talk of giving prisoners 12-inch lettuce harvesting knives to bring in the crops. Now, how many people really think that giving prisoners long knives is a good idea? This isn't a viable solution. According to the National Council of State Legislatures, 30 states saw an SB 1070-like bill introduced this year. They failed in 26 states. So despite an 86% failure rate, these laws are still going to be introduced. They say doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, and I think if you look at the reports, you'll have to agree. We certainly understand why businesses join ALEC, and that's their right. Many of our members would like to join if they could afford it. I have to wonder how immigration laws would be different if the businesses who actually needed a real labor force participated in these discussions instead of just law enforcement groups and like-minded legislators. This gets to my final point. There are Arizona businesses who belong to ALEC, and while we can't expect them to do this, we would ask them to help be a voice for their colleagues in the business community and the public who are unable to join or attend these meetings and express their views. We ask them and our elected officials to look out for those interests that are being damaged by poorly thought out legislation. Just because it came from ALEC doesn't mean it's good for Arizona. Immigration is a federal issue and needs to be solved at the federal level. Continuing to discuss legislation that affect free markets, access to labor, creates unfunded mandates, and damages our economies and communities is simply unacceptable. We must do better, and we call on the business members of ALEC and our legislators to consider all of the impacts of their efforts on all of us, not just on their own special interests. Thank you.
Next up, we have Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. She's a minister with the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix.
Good morning. My name is Susan Frederick Gray, Frederick-Gray. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. As a Unitarian Universalist and a person of faith, we hold democracy at the core of our faith. Democracy is a key principle of Unitarian Universalism, and ALEC is an anti-democratic influence on our state. It gives unprecedented influence to multinational corporations over the influence of the citizens of Arizona, and that is wrong, and I stand against that. As a person of faith, I stand up for families. I take the commandment to love my neighbor seriously and to welcome the stranger as my neighbor. Laws like SB 1070, sponsored by ALEC and spreading across the country, criminalize migrant workers, criminalize families, and criminalize DREAM Act students, and this is immoral. As a person of faith, we must welcome the stranger, we must love our neighbors, and we must protect our families, the hard workers of this country, both migrant workers, citizen workers, and we must stand for the human rights of all people in this country.
So there you have it, the story of ALEC here in Arizona. Some of the most divisive, controversial bills that this legislature has been consumed with have been pushed by ALEC and pushed by corporations. They have been using legislators as pawns to stuff taxpayers' dollars in their own pockets. Now, are there any questions for any of the people here up on the panel? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.